Okay, the big news in the aviation world, Trevor Jacob admission. We're going to be talking the plea agreement on this episode of Taking Off. Hi, I'm Dan Milliken, and I really don't have time to do a nice edit piece like I usually like, so this will have to do. I'm heading out for the weekend, and I have Chewy back there. I guess we can call him Crime Dog McFluff. The news dropped Thursday, May 11th from the United States Attorney's Office out of Central California. I'm going to abbreviate them as USAO, that Trevor Jacob has agreed to plead guilty to a felony charge of obstructing a federal investigation. I called the USAO and I talked to them, and I've also received the 18-page plea agreement, and we'll talk about what's in that. And to be clear, at this time, Jacob has not pleaded guilty to anything. He's only agreed to plead guilty at the plea hearing, which is in the next 2 weeks. And if you don't know what we're talking about, Trevor Jacob is a YouTuber who skydives, jumps out of helicopters, and has a pilot's license. He plays loose with what's real and what's staged in order to get views. And in November of 2021, he purchased a 1947 Taylorcraft airplane, which is a very simple old plane from the 40s, and claimed to be flying it up into the mountains so he could spread his friend's ashes. And then he claimed the engine stopped. But fortunately, he was wearing a sport parachute, as well as GoPros and a fire extinguisher up his pants leg. And then he released a video a month later, and safe to say, the reception wasn't what he was expecting. There were so many things wrong with the stunt, and I'm not going to rehash all that. You can watch it up in the videos that we posted last year. And what's important are the dates. On November 24th, Trevor Jacob flew his 47 Taylorcraft into the mountains and jumped from it. He is not being charged a felony for this stunt. He's being charged a felony for what happened after. And by the regulations, when you have an airplane crash, you have to report that to the NTSB as quickly as practical. For Trevor Jacob, it took 2 days. And he reported to the NTSB on November 26th. And consequently, the NTSB started an investigation, which is standard practice. In addition, a couple days later, the FAA started an investigation as well. But the important thing to note is that the NTSB had started their investigation. And on the call with the NTSB, the investigator made it clear that Jacob was responsible for preserving the wreckage and that the NTSB would need to see it. And the investigator emphasized this to Jacob. And 4 days later, on November 30th, the NTSB asked Jacob by email if he had the longitude and latitude coordinates for the crash site. And Jacob responded by email that he did not have them, but was trying to locate the aircraft. And here's what the plea agreement says, and I quote, "Despite defendant's claim that he was not aware of the plane's wreckage location, defendant had, in fact, previously found the wreckage and had removed it from the plane crash. In early December, defendant contacted a helicopter company and asked the owner of the company if he could help the defendant retrieve his airplane. And then on or about December 10th, Jacob with a friend drove pickup trucks and a trailer to the helicopter at an airport near the wreckage. And then the three boarded the helicopter, flew to the wreckage, they secured it with straps, and then with the helicopter, flew it back to the nearby airport. Jacob and his friend, they disconnected it from the helicopter, they loaded it onto a trailer, and they drove it back to Jacob's hangar in Lompoc. And consequently, over the next few days, Jacob cut up the airplane and disposed of it into various trash receptacles. It's almost like something out of the TV show Dexter, if the Taylorcraft was a person. And talking to the USAO, I asked if there was an investigation into the helicopter company or the friend of Trevor Jacob, and the response was no comment, but there was not an investigation currently going. So I don't know if Jacob just told his friend and told the helicopter company that he just needed help recovering the wreckage. His friend and the helicopter company, they might not have even known that the NTSB had directed Jacob not to move the wreckage. In addition to impeding the investigation by removing the wreckage and disposing of it, the plea agreement also mentions multiple lies that Jacob told the investigators, including that his engine had quit 35 minutes into the flight, that he had to jump out because there was no suitable landing spot. Is Trevor Jacob going to do prison time? Well, that was another question I asked, because the press release alluded to a plea agreement, but no clue as to what Trevor Jacob was actually agreeing to. And now I have the plea agreement and been through the 18 pages. It does not specify a recommended sentence. Also, the USAO can only now offer the court their opinion. It's guidance only. The press release mentions the maximum sentence is 20 years in federal prison, but the plea agreement mentions some lawyer babble about lowering by 2 levels the sentence recommendation, but increasing it by 2 levels because of Jacob willfully and knowingly lying. I don't know. And here's why I think Trevor Jacob made this plea agreement. If he had not, the USAO had collected enough evidence to make it pretty clear that Jacob was guilty. And had Jacob gone through with a trial and a jury and all that, there's a good chance he could have received the maximum sentence. And my guess, and here I am speculating, is that his attorneys advised him to come clean now, because the further he dug the hole, the worse it'll be. So I think he is cutting his losses and coming clean now in hopes of a more lenient punishment. And I asked the USAO what the sentence would be, and they replied they didn't think it would be the maximum. Slim chance was the quote. And that at the lowest, it could be just probation and no time served. But here's what the plea agreement says. If the judge sentences Jacob to more than 24 months of prison, Jacob has the right to appeal the sentence. If the judge sentences Jacob to less than 18 months of prison, the USAO may appeal the sentence decision. Here's what's next. In the next few weeks, there will be this initial plea hearing in which Jacob will change his plea to guilty. This is called a change of plea hearing. After that, there is a pre-sentence report created by the probation board in which they will interview all the parties involved in this and then give that report to the court, to Jacob, and to the USAO. And then there will be a sentencing hearing. The judge will take into account all the recommendations from the probation board, anything added by the defendant, and anything by the USAO, and then the judge will issue a sentence. And my guess is, unless motions for continuances and all that kind of hinder stuff, we're looking at late summer, early fall before the sentencing hearing will occur. And finally, what about his pilot certificate? Well, the FAA pulled his certificate in April of 2022, and that was for 1 year, minus 2 months for doing it nicely. So Trevor Jacob most likely would have had his pilot certificate back. But the plea agreement specifies that Trevor Jacob will not apply for a pilot certificate. So I'm a little confused by that. He could say, I already have my certificate, so I don't need to apply for one. Or the FAA pulled his certificate longer than what was mentioned before, and now Trevor Jacob will not be allowed to reapply. And by signing this plea agreement, Trevor Jacob knowingly understands that he will be a felon. He will not be able to vote, he will not be able to carry a firearm, and all the things that come by being a convicted felon. So that's what we know. So now I'm going to talk about opinions, specifically mine. Feel free to quit the video at this point if you only want to stick with the facts. When I called the USAO and talked to their press conference, he said, and I quote, "Doing something like this would be criminally stupid." And I want to center on that word stupid. Some of you may bring up the Red Bull plane swap or the Red Bull landing on the helicopter pad in Dubai as similar to this. But in those cases, agree or disagree with them doing those stunts, it is nowhere near what Jacob did. It's apples and oranges. In one case, you had weeks and months of a team of highly skilled professionals looking through every angle, examining every risk and mitigating those risks in any way and every way possible. In the other case, you had a 20-something thrill seeker looking for views who strapped a fire extinguisher to his calf. If the plane had crashed and started a fire, it would have been way beyond that fire extinguisher in seconds. And it was quite some time before Jacob could even parachute down and hike to the crash site. I'm going to use the word of the USAO. That's stupid. And that's just one stupid action among a myriad of stupid actions. I do have to wonder if Jacob's elevator goes to the top floor. The bottom line, what can we take from all of this to help make us better pilots and better people? For me, it's always a reminder to be truthful. Lies will get you into trouble. And when you start with one lie, often it forces you into having to tell a whole bunch more lies. It's just better to tell the truth up front. And that's what I'm going to take. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our sponsors like Colton Mortgage. You can call them if you need a residential mortgage, and it's a company run by a pilot at coltontakingoff.com. Also, Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taking off lights in the market. 67 designs. I just love my mounts for cameras and iPads and phones. Marshall Protective Services, private security elevated. And if you need insurance, check out Jerry at clemensinsurance.net. He saved me a lot of money, and I know he can do that for you too. And of course, Flying Eyes, simply the best glasses and sunglasses out there. If you ever wear a helmet or headsets, they're amazing. Use our code TAKINGOFF, all caps, one word, for 10% off. And that's it for this report. Remember, superior judgment trumps superior skills. We'll see you later.